Welcome to BAM, the show conquering sameness. Beyond the billboard bios and status posts showdowns lies a wasteland. Dry, quiet, and ignored. It's called the desert zone in LinkedIn land. Here, legal content goes to die. LinkedIn business pages and newsletters go barren, but one strategist saw potential in the quiet. By day, he's Jeff Cunningham, lawyer, ethicist, and content innovator. But when the platform dries up, he becomes Captain Oasis, creating powerful ecosystems out of forgotten formats. And I'm your narrator, the BAM Man, here to witness another battle in the war against sameness. This is BAM.
To mess with this city.
BAM!
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 I'm BAM Man, conquering sameness one platform at a time.
BAM!
The desert zone, where parched posts crack and crumble. A sun-scorched landscape of abandoned updates. Pages are launched and then left to languish. Newsletters are drafted and then left to dry. This is a place where businesses long to have their thirst for attention quenched. Abandoned by businesses and marketers alike. But Captain Oasis doesn't see a wasteland. He sees untapped power. Captain Oasis, what drew you into the desert zone? When everyone else has wandered off into the dunes, what did you notice about business pages and newsletters that others seem to have missed?
The biggest thing was that LinkedIn kept business pages and newsletters around. And as opposed to, say, LinkedIn Audio, which was also rolled out with a lot of fanfare, but then dried up. You know, LinkedIn removed the audio presentation option, but they kept business pages, they kept newsletters. And anytime LinkedIn's investing in their resources, I like to track that. I follow various newsletters myself. I follow content creators that talk about LinkedIn updates. I try to track what LinkedIn is trying to play up and tap into that. And two huge areas were newsletters and business pages.
Absolutely. And I've seen that too, even just with what we do. The fact that, we've just launched a newsletter. I love the integration, and maybe we'll talk about this more, but the fact that, the second someone connects with you, they can get that invitation to the newsletter. The fact that the newsletter is seamless within the ecosystem. And so I see big potential for newsletters, though, again, for me, untapped.
And one extra potential about newsletters specifically is they catch Google searches. So it's one of the very few items on LinkedIn that is pushed outside of LinkedIn. LinkedIn likes to keep everybody on LinkedIn, which makes sense. But, the newsletters actually do hit Google searches. So I think they're a really, really great resource for any content creator, but especially lawyers.
I did not know that. Thank you. Now we come to the parasitic beast who feeds on dry content and empty impressions. They shiver at the name in the desert land, the name Dry Scroll. He thrives when business pages stay static, irrelevant, or robotic. But business pages aren't billboards. They're ecosystems. What transforms a ghost town LinkedIn business page into something worth following? What tactics do you use to keep yours alive, and what do you think draws people back from using them?
I think the absolute key is authenticity. And I think that's what the name business page sort of suggests the opposite of that, right? We think of it as our corporate website. And I think the same thing applies to websites too, but I think a LinkedIn business page should be seen as a lot more of a customized slice of your profile and your actual personality rather than an extension of your corporate website. And I think when people see that authenticity, that realism, then that's going to draw them right back in. It's something worth reading. Nobody just peruses websites of law firms or any business. So think about the content that you want to read on LinkedIn and elsewhere, and use as much of that on your business pages as you can. And I think that's what separates mine from most. It's very specific. It's very, very niched down. But if someone is interested in what I'm talking about, I think they'll find my business pages to be engaging and really authentic. And my personal sense of humor, my personal passion for legal ethics and risk management for law firms, which is very, very specific, comes through. The other aspect is not to shy away, just like you would with a personal social media platform, not to shy away from video, images, things like that. Again, the traditional corporate LinkedIn business page is very much a website. And anything you can do to make it not just like your website, I think makes it that much different, that much more palatable for the user.
You mentioned earlier that one of the reasons that you keep working with it is because it still exists within the ecosystem. And recently we've noticed, and this has really been within about the last month or two, we created a page and then, we started inviting people and then we started propagating content and then we would invite as we would go. But we started seeing jumps of 150 new followers a week just a few weeks ago. We went from about 200 followers to almost 800 or so followers just within the last 6 weeks. When we've had this page for who knows how long. So I think there is a bit of a cachet that they're giving to it right now. And it's like every algorithm, right? They always pick those one or two things that they give the love to. And if you don't know what they are, you stay away from them. But if you're smart, you ride that wave as it comes in. And in my opinion, right now, business pages are seeing more clout put behind them by LinkedIn itself.
100%. They, as they update and tinker with the algorithm, it is always something where, there's no magic bullet. You have to sort of just try things. You have to read and follow those who are sort of in the know. But it's interesting. You the numbers you said were spot on. What I've read and heard is that once you cross the 500 follower threshold on a business page, now LinkedIn is really pushing that out. That's sort of where the algorithm says, okay, there's something different with this business page. And right now, where business pages are kind of hot, I think if you're showing the growth, then the algorithm's going to reward that even more. It's going to say, okay, people are following this business page. There's something about this business page, as opposed to, the vast majority, that we should push this out there and see if people are interested and see if this one is something that people want to follow. So I think there's a real opportunity, right now to grow business pages in a way that there just wasn't before.
Absolutely. I remember just months ago telling people, I don't even know why we have business pages other than to share their content to our real followers on our personal page. So the dynamic just in 3 or 4 months has changed, but that's the nature of what we do, right? What is cool today is dumb tomorrow and vice versa.
And I will say the other really advantageous aspect of the business page, I have 3 business pages in addition to my law firm's business page, which our chief marketing officer runs, but I also help out with quite a bit because I'm a big LinkedIn guy. All of those pages can interact with content. And so you can like, comment, and share from your business pages. One of my 3 personal business pages has my picture. It's called the Law Firm General Counsel. It doesn't have my name, but it has my picture, slightly different profile picture than my profile. And so, sometimes I do end up talking to myself in the comment section between one of my business pages and me, and we have a good time. A lot of times I find other content that's, related to the specific business pages. One is sort of a much more professional, specific law firm risk management page. One is my blog. I talk about a different rule of professional conduct every day, just the next ethics rule. And then one's a memes page. I make a meme for each rule of professional conduct. It's very challenging to do because they're not really funny. And so I have different audiences, but overlapping audiences between the 3. And there's tons of subject matter between the 3 pages and my personal page where there's so much overlap that, sometimes it does make sense for one of my pages or my personal page to talk about my meme or the next rule or whatever we're talking about. So I think it's a really valuable tool in that regard too.
And we do that as well. We segment our business pages. We keep 4 brands internally. We have our legal podcast where it's designed for lawyers. So it's content from like people who serve lawyers in various, capacities and the content produced for them. Then we have the legal podcast Answers, where it's from the lawyers and they're giving answers to issues. Then we also have the legal podcast business page that has to do with our business attorneys that talk about business and litigation or just the various aspects of business law that affects them. And oddly enough, we also have a LPN-LOLZ, LOLs, where we create memes, primarily just general lawyer memes. So we might have to meme off because I think I might be the LinkedIn page meme champion, at least out of the two of us. Maybe this will be a tournament. We'll get a round robin going. We'll have a tournament, meme pages, see who wins. I'll be 1-12, but I'll take it.
I always say I produce the best model rules-based memes available on the internet. So I stand by that.
So Captain Oasis, newsletters aren't dead. They've just been left to wither in the digital sun. When you step in, you breathe formatting, you put in headlines that hook, I imagine cadences that convert. I think you also said 2 newsletters. What's the difference between your weekly newsletter and your monthly? And how do you keep people opening, reading, responding to these newsletters when, let's open up our email inbox and there's 50 a day there. So how do you actually promote these as being not just another dry, dead source for people to not pay attention to, but something that actually brings engagement and brings contact with those that you would want to have a relationship with through LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a battle. It is. And I think the 2 key, so first my newsletters are, the monthly newsletter is a really laser focused law firm risk management newsletter, the law firm general counsel. That's all we talk about in that newsletter is specifically law firm risk management. There's always an ethics overlap, but it really is more functional. It's for small firms, really defined audience. And we have about 1,200 followers, 3,000 followers from that newsletter. And real quick, a newsletter tip: when you're starting your first newsletter on LinkedIn, you get the option to send an invite to all of your connections. And when I created the other newsletter, I didn't do that because I was like, this is new. Let me see what it's like. You never get that option again. So you make sure you send it to everyone when you launch your newsletter. There's no downside to it. Everybody gets an invite. That's great. I have 3,000 plus from the monthly newsletter, which I was able to send to all of my contacts. My other newsletter is weekly, and it's a little bit more free form. It's sort of whatever issue I'm dealing with that week that I think is interesting. I've already done the research for professional reasons or for other content, and I put it in a longer form article. And that one I didn't invite. That one was much more organic, and it's around 1,200 readers, subscribers, because I didn't invite everyone. I think having the 2 is really nice. Sometimes there's overlap, and sometimes I will if it fits both, I'll use the same article, although very rarely. And I think the keys to keeping it sort of fresh are, 1, having art. So many newsletters don't have, I use Canva. I create a relatively simple picture.
Do you just use art at the top, or do you mean throughout the content itself to make it more of a short read, please my eyes, paragraph, please my eyes? Which of those are you referring to?
So both, and that gets into my second point about how to keep it a little fresher than an old stale newsletter. But art at the top, that cover art, I think really lets people engage with it like they would a post. And I think that's the key. Myself included, I sign up for tons of newsletters. I don't have the bandwidth, the time, the initiative to sit there and read a 10-minute newsletter. So I think the art at the top kind of pulls people in like a post, and then using art, emojis, bullet points, whatever internally to make the long form content much more palatable. Really, and it's counterintuitive, but the shorter you can make your newsletter, the better received it is. And LinkedIn provides a lot of great analytics on the newsletter site. So you can really see how many subscribers you have, who's open, how many, what percentage are opening it. You can't drill down into individual users for better or worse. And you can see how that article in your newsletter chain performs against the other articles. You can really balance it out, whether a 3-minute read or a 7-minute read resonates with your audience. And obviously it depends on your audience, your subject matter. But I found the shorter I can make the newsletter and still deliver my points, the more palatable, more post-like I can make the newsletter, the better it's going to be.
Absolutely. And to go off LinkedIn just for a moment, we do a daily 3 to 5 minute tips and tricks, law practice, marketing and management type of email. And that is by far our best piece in our whole ecosystem. We see more clients. I love it. Every day I get 1 to 2 emails that say F you, I hate you. And I get 3 to 5 emails that say you're the most brilliant man ever. I want to work with you. How do I do it? And so I'm doing something right? You're doing something right when people hate you and when people love you. When you hear crickets and nothing, that's when you know. Now, I alluded to this earlier, and you talked about the fact that you can invite all of the people who are part of your network. But my understanding, and I had somebody set this up, but it seems to me whenever I have somebody new that I connect with, if they have a newsletter, I get an auto pop in 2 seconds. It says John Jones does a newsletter, the Jones Diaries or whatever, do you want to follow it? Click yes here.
Yep.
Is that an auto setting, or is that something that we need to kind of get into that back office and kind of learn to make sure that we're turning that on to give that extra impetus for growth?
I think it's automatically on. And, LinkedIn did away with creator mode where you could sort of dive deep and set things like that on and off. I believe it's automatically on. I'm not even sure if you can turn it off anymore. I think the individual user, I think, can turn it off for all of their new connections. I'm not sure, as the newsletter creator, I'm not sure if you can turn that invite off or not. And honestly, it's because I would never want to turn it off. If someone wants to connect with me, I want to let them know I've got these newsletters out there. And, it's definitely a great way to organically grow your audience and then your newsletter's audience at the same time.
Do you find that having that double ask right up front, hey, join this and this, do you feel that affects conversion rate? Whereas if you were only giving them one thing, maybe that you would see a little bit better results? Because again, we both talked about having 4 internal brands. I can imagine if somebody was hyper, I've got these subsets of clients, so I've got 8 newsletters, and then I connected with them, and then it's do you want the fireman's newsletter and the policeman's newsletter and the insurance newsletter, and I feel at some point that would create some friction in my connecting. So what do you do to keep people to help conversion by having more than just that one action, but by having 2?
Yeah, so I think if you had 8 or something, that would be overwhelming. And I have had instances, especially where I follow the law firm's page, and then I get, the invite to their 4 newsletters that are practice area based, and it's it's too much. I think for me, the really focused monthly newsletter, I think in the title, it's called Safer Law Firms by the Month from the Law Firm General Counsel. So it automatically tells people you're committing to once a month. It's not bad.
It reduces that friction of
Yeah, and I feel like the weekly, which is called Point 1, it suggests it's under 6 minutes, lawyers bill in 0.1 increments, so you can read the thing in under 6 minutes. And I think the monthly gets a lot more traction because it's a big, it's much less of a commitment than someone signing up for the weekly newsletter. I think and hope that I do enough cross-pollination that if people are interested in the monthly and start looking at the monthly, then they might click on the Point 1 weekly newsletter to see more of a legal ethics based, more of a free form based newsletter rather than that really focused risk management one. But I think having 2 gives me a nice outlet to provide longer form content, although I try to keep it short, to different audiences, that it's all on my personal posts, but just in way shorter form. And if something works on my personal page, then I think, I should make a longer post about this for the newsletter and for the business pages.
Isn't that the way marketing is? You put out something and you're like, I'm about to light the world on fire with this brilliance. And it goes out to crickets. And then you're like, I got to put something up there. And you just throw it up there and everyone's like, wow. So, you talked about being able to see your back office. And you don't have to give these numbers, but just for a point of reference, you've built a newsletter that's a monthly newsletter that is to your ideal client that has about 3,000 people opted in. What types of numbers, and I don't need to know, last month I had 3 $15,000 clients sign up, but what would you say are your open rates and engagement rates in general? What would you say to somebody who's okay, so what do you see?
It's around 15% is our open rate of the 3,000. And around 70% of my new clients come from LinkedIn. Now, I haven't bothered, and our marketing team hasn't bothered to break it down from, this person follows this newsletter, this person's on this business page, this person liked your stuff or engaged with your stuff. But LinkedIn is a huge source of my new business. And I only represent lawyers. That's my focus, and law firms, small law firms. And so 15% of 3,000, I think that's good numbers. I'd love to get
That's
that
450 people.
I'd love to get that
If I put
percentage.
450 people in a room that were your target audience that wanted to hear what you had to say for even 15, 20 minutes, what would you pay for that?
Right. And even more than, this is sort of my LinkedIn approach. Even more than whether they open it or not, they get a notification that a new monthly article came out from Jeff Cunningham about law firm risk management. So every month they see that notification, and if they start to think about law firm risk management, that draws them in. And as I said before, the articles are caught by Google searches. Just this morning, I was searching I have a hearing tomorrow, and impacts Rule 1.14, which is diminished capacity clients, not a rule that gets a lot of traction. And so I actually was just Googling to see, are there any other states that have ethics opinions about Rule 1.14 aside from New York, where my hearing is? And I found a great article that I wrote. Right, it was a LinkedIn article, and it was about Rule 114.
There's nothing better when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, it was 8 or 9 hits down in the Google search, but that's wild that, obviously no one else is talking about Rule 1.14. So if you have a nice niche, it could really, really be just perfect to have those articles out there. Then somebody reads that article because they have a need for that very specific issue. They see your newsletter, maybe they click and follow along.
Well, do you think that newsletters fuel your business page or vice versa? Do you see a symbiosis between the two?
Yes, and the monthly newsletter is directly connected to the Law Firm General Counsel business page, where I attack a different aspect of law firm risk management every month. The weekly newsletter has the same name as what I consider my blog, where I talk about, it's point 1, and I talk about the next model rule of professional conduct every day. I just go to the next one. When we finish, I usually take the rest of the week off, and then I start at I start at the beginning, not Rule 1.0, but I start at the preamble and scope on the next Monday, and we just keep going and going and going. I don't have a newsletter that corresponds to the meme page, but that's okay. Those two sort of areas with the business page and the newsletter, they really overlap a lot. I try to use last month's newsletter for the next month's business page, or vice versa, so that and the audience does sort of seem to track between the two different sets. I don't want people to see the same thing on the business page that they saw on the newsletter, and vice versa. If you can sort of give it a delay, I think, and obviously it's a little different. The newsletter is longer form. As short as I try to keep it, it's still longer form content. And where the business pages have posts, videos, things like that, even though the topics are the same, the content really is different. So I think that's really valuable. And the reality is, if I can't remember what I talked about last month on my business page, nobody else even my mother doesn't remember what I was talking about.
Exactly.
So I don't worry too much about that. I think, I'm talking about law firm risk management. It's going to repeat itself. And that's okay. And I think there's a value to that consistency too.
Next, we're gonna fight Echo Fade, which is a slow bleed villain who drains the energy from content left in isolation. Now, you counter that with hydration, repurposed, cross-linked, strategically resurfaced posts. You literally just discussed that. Not repetition, but reactivation. Lawyers don't have time to write new content daily. What are the best ways to reuse your business page and newsletter content without it going stale? What's one tactic that you've used to extend reach without creating from scratch, outside of what we just talked about?
Yeah, I love that idea of hydration, right? It's like reactivating your stuff. I've been very active on LinkedIn since 2020, and so I have a ton of content. I have just sort of living Google documents for my posts, and it's a great way to kind of go back and say, oh yeah, this one did really well. Obviously, you look at the LinkedIn analytics, you know what posts and what formats work for you really well. Use that, and then just freshen it up. I mean, it's great if for me, everything's really tied to the model rules of professional conduct. So if there's a new ethics opinion or a rule actually gets amended or changed or adopted by a different state, that's a great time for me to just search Rule 1.14 or whatever rule I'm interested in, and look at my past content and see what I've done. I also think, using AI is just really important now. And if you're not doing it as a lawyer, I think you're missing the boat. I think AI for content creation is fabulous. I'm a big fan of AI for actual legal writing.
We're an AI forward company, so
right,
preaching to the choir, my friend.
I think it's a tool, and a lawyer who says, "Oh, I don't use AI," I think is like a lawyer who says, "I don't use email. I don't use Lexis or Westlaw." I don't get it, and I'm not sure.
Fax you can it to me.
yeah, exactly. So, I think that's a really great way, and there's so many cool tools that can sort of repurpose your posts for you. Now, just like if you're using it to submit to the court, you're submitting this to your audience, which I treat the same way I would a judge, right? They come to my stuff because they trust me. And if it is AI generated garbage, then I'm going to lose their trust. And it's way easier than a judge who has to listen to me, even if they get mad at me and I get in trouble. Somebody can just unfollow if they want. So you've got to make it yours. But it's a great way for you to play around with the AI tool to change your content in a way that keeps it fresh and comes from a different angle. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think by repurposing that content, you really get a much better product. You're giving your audience a much better product rather than coming up with something new every single time, which a lot of lawyers do. I think they're cheating themselves and their audience when they do that.
We say two things. One is filter it through humanity. And then the second one is, and this is our core rule, AI then eyes.
Yeah,
because a lot of people, they just, and you can tell, look at their content, and it's like you misspelled your name and the name of the product you're selling me. So this probably was made on AI. So what I'm hearing is this isn't about going viral. And this is one thing I battle, working with attorneys, doing podcasting, with YouTube, with everything else that we do. We have a very holistic ecosystem marketing platform that we do with our attorneys. One question I get often is like, well, how do I go viral? And it's like, that's not the point. It's about building credibility. And so what I'm hearing is, as Captain Oasis, you weave ethics into your message, but you don't forget that there's a real person reading this. You're not writing for AI. You're using AI as a tool to write for people. And I think some people use AI to write for AI, to show up in AI, and they say that the LLMs are going to collapse if we just keep doing that. Because until we add real humanity into these systems, you can't create an artificial intelligence or a digital intelligence. Just like when we automated human labor, we're now automating human thought. And without giving it that thought, it collapses on itself because it degrades over time, because it learns from itself only, and that's never a positive. So how do you walk the line between authority and authenticity?
Yeah, so I think for me, right, it's passion. And I'm very passionate, for better or worse, about the rules of professional conduct and law firm risk management. The entire reason I really got active on LinkedIn was COVID hit, and I was working out of my living room, and my wife candidly told me, if you don't stop talking about this stuff, we're getting a divorce or I'm going to kill you. I was like, all right, that's
I have had conversations like that in my life too.
Yep.
So
I was like, all right, that's fair. So I needed an outlet, and LinkedIn provided me that outlet. I think it saved my sanity, it saved my marriage, and it really propelled my career. I had always used it before, but it really was when I became a content creator. And I think if you find something to talk about, to write about, that you actually do care about, the authenticity and the authority are one and the same. If you're trying to force it and you don't really care about your topic and you're really just trying to do it, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like misusing AI. If you're just using the AI to spit out some garbage so that you can post something, it's not going to resonate with anybody. And really, if you're forcing yourself to write and speak about something that you don't really care about, it's just not going to work. It's not going to carry. I mean, you could be 100% right. You can have all the authority in the world, but without that authenticity, I just don't think people are going to want to read it or watch it or consume it in any way. It's just the reality of how we engage with social media. And I think an easy test is just to look at what you follow. Individual user, like, what do you want to see when you go on LinkedIn? It's obviously different than if you hop on Facebook or TikTok or whatever social media platform you're on. So think about what you're going to LinkedIn to read. What stops you and makes you actually invest in reading a LinkedIn newsletter? Or, what did you search in Google that caught your attention? That's what you want to create. That's what I mean. Obviously, if you can put yourself into your target audience, your potential client, that's key. But I really just do it based on what I'm interested in, and I think that sort of hits both prongs, the authenticity and the authority.
People love passion. I mean, you can talk about flooring, but if you do it passionately, people will sit there and listen.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about rule point, whatever you were talking about. And there's people, if you say it passionately enough and articulately enough and with enough like real authenticity and conviction behind it, they're going to listen to it. The desert zone's no longer quiet because Captain Oasis is now in the feed. Dry Scroll might regroup. Echo Fade may return. But as long as strategy flows and content is intentional, the silence won't win. I'm Bam Man, and this is BAM, the show conquering sameness, one platform at a time.